Here with my sister Shay, as always, and we are here with a special guest in the building. We have brother Kaba Kamene. What's going on, Kamene? How you doing?
My brother, I am doing excellent. So happy to be here, to be able to speak to you and Sister Shay and your audience. I've been looking forward to this conversation, brother.
Yes, brother. You know, a lot of people, they know about you through Hidden Colors, but I want to dig deeper. Like, I want to go back to when you first got into African history. When did you get into enlightenment, and who inspired you?
Wow. It's interesting you asked that question, brother, because the question that you asked me is so very important, but there's one thing I'd like to tell you before that. And that is, I grew up in a project in New York, mid-Manhattan. And I grew up in a community where there were many cultures from the African diaspora. And I particularly had friends from Puerto Rico. And I had a friend whose family practiced Santeria. And I would go to his house and we would hang out with each other. And there were times that they would have celebrations where they would call upon the Orishas. And I was Roman Catholic, grew up Roman Catholic, straight through high school, Roman Catholic school. Choir boy, altar boy. I dare say I even want to be a priest. But when I would visit my friends' home, when they would be in celebration, I see las siete potencias, you know, the seven powers. I'd see the Orishas. I would see images of Africans that I never saw in my life. And the people that were celebrating, many of them were my melanation, but there were some that were not. And so in this celebration and in this phenomenal experience, the love that was in the room, the people that shared, and dancing, you know, and the food and just all the things that went into the celebration became very important to me. Now, the reason why I say that is because I was never introduced, I should say this, my first introduction to Africa was not through history, it was through spirituality. And that becomes very important in terms of the formation of the human mind, particularly when it's a child's mind. I'm talking about 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old.
So this was happening when you was that young?
Yes, man. Yeah, because I was hanging out with my friend.
Okay.
You know, he'd come over to my house, I'd go over to his house, you know. And there were times that I would be in his house where they would be celebrating Santeria, where they would go through the rituals of Santeria. I had neighbors upstairs that were from Haiti, and I was exposed to voodoo. You know, and again, when you go back into a child's mind, there are certain things that I didn't understand. There were certain things that my mind, as an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, was pre-reasoning skills. All I see, children sense your feelings. They pick up. They're very empathetic. And unfortunately, humans lose their empathy as they mature. And see, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy.
Right.
Sympathy is when you feel, let me just put it like this. You feel for somebody, but you have never experienced it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Empathy is when you feel for someone and you have felt it before. For instance, I always give the example, if you were to go to your friend's mother's funeral with your mother, the best you could have is sympathy. Because you've never experienced the loss of your mother.
But if you did,
that's
empathy. Yeah.
Because you now feel what that person feels.
And I'm glad you broke that down, because a lot of people get those words mixed up.
Oh yeah. Because and that becomes very important, because I know the difference between having sympathy for somebody and having empathy for somebody. But that also attached me to children, because part of my background is 31 years as a teacher and an administrator in the New York City Board of Education.
Wow.
And I've taught every grade, I've taught every subject, I've taught college for 14 years. So I've been able to track children throughout their entire experience up until 21, 22. And I even had adult students.
Wow.
So that one thing that I've seen about children, and I've watched them, because I stayed in the same community in South Central Bronx all of my career. I never moved out. And I stayed in the community in order to track my work. I didn't want to lose the children. You know, if I teach, a couple of years in Brooklyn, and then I start teaching in the Bronx, and then I start teaching in Manhattan, I'm teaching children, wonderful experience, but I don't watch them grow. You know, I actually taught college, and one of my students in college was one of my students in elementary school. Wow. That's how deep it got. And she didn't know I taught there, and I didn't know she was coming. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that when you're young, you have to depend on your senses.
Exactly.
And an infant depends on his or her motor sensors. An infant smells mother. An infant can sense mothers in the room, maybe through smell, maybe through sound, maybe even the way mama walked with her slippers on.
Mm-hmm. That's Survival, how my daughter do.
Okay, well then you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And as you grow, your motor skills grow and your empathy grows. But in order to survive as you get older in a dog-eat-dog world, a lot of times you got to put your empathy to the side and you got to just work through reason. The perfect African mind is a reasoning, empathetic mind. Never forget what it feels like. And children have a very unique way of feeling it, but not experiencing it because they're too young.
Right.
But they can sense in you what you're feeling.
Right.
And that's how they can respond to it. And so that's why it's important, with empathy and sympathy, that you understand. I say that because when I was celebrating Santeria, and when I was calling forward Jemaja, Oshun, Ogun, we was just going through it. I was only repeating what everybody else was saying. I didn't know what I was saying, right. But I was still invoking the Orishas, and they were still coming to me, through me, mm-hmm. and impacting me. So to answer your question, by the time I became 12 and a half, I first met Professor John Henry Clarke.
Heavy scholar for our listeners out there. Dr. Clarke is one of my favorite scholars. Go on. We ain't gonna stop you there. Go ahead.
But that's good, brother. And this is our conversation. This is organic, brother and sister Chey. This is a back and forth thing.
Yeah.
And I think the more interactive we are in our conversations, the more we all own what it is that we're experiencing.
Right. And one of the things that Dr. Clarke said that I still coin to this day, because I'm always debating, I'm not even debating anymore, but I'm always having conversations with individuals about ancient Egypt. And Dr. Clarke taught me one thing, his most famous saying, I don't debate with those who are not my equals. I teach.
Yes.
That's Dr. Clarke for you.
Let me give you something else that he used to say. He used to say, you can only have a debate when you have two sides. Right. You don't have a side. Think about what that means psychologically.
Right.
Because I'm done arguing the Africanity of Kemet or Egypt. I'm done. I'm not going to discuss that anymore. If there's other people that will discuss it, that's fine. Go to them, but don't go to me.
Right.
I don't discuss that anymore. That's not a debate anymore.
Right.
And if you allow somebody to entertain their thought, as illusionary as it is, you still are allowing them to bring it into existence.
Exactly.
You ain't bringing that nonsense into my existence. You bring that to somebody else.
Right.
Homie, don't play that.
That's right.
And we have to get to a point where we're willing to cut people off. There are certain things I don't discuss anymore. I'll direct people as to who might discuss it with them, but I'm not. I've already come to a scientific conclusion about the Africanness of Kemet. Mm-hmm. But what's even more important than that is the fact that you can't understand Kemet or Egypt if you don't understand Kush.
Which predates Egypt.
It is Egypt. Egypt doesn't exist. Think about if, like when African Americans in the 20s and 30s and the 40s moved out of the South, You know, that great migration north, the great northern migration to the north. Right. My father came up from Alabama, and I have family from Alabama that came up to New York. And when they came up to New York and their family's still in Alabama, the people who are in New York are still the same Alabamians. And that's who the Kemites are. The Kemites are the same Africans that were in Kush. The way in which Indo-European, and when I use it, I mean European and Asian. I use Indo-European to bring them in a group and not separate the European from the Asian. They are the northern climate, impacted by the Ice Age. So when they came, you know, when you think about when they came in from the eastern boundaries into Kemet, they came upon a people and they called them something.
Ethiopia.
Yes, but I'm talking about the Kemites. The name came Egypt, okay? And the name Egypt, even though a lot of people say that don't use the word blase, blase, that's still a derivative of an African word. Because, you know, my bad. Let me step back for a minute. It wasn't the Indo-Europeans that used the word Egypt. It was the very early people that came in, particularly the ones that came and called it Ethiopia. That's one group of people. Same people called it Ethiopia were the ones that called it Aegyptos. Okay? Out of Aegyptos, it further was created the word Egypt. A, E, Gu, Gi, and Patos became Pit. So Egypt is a derivative of the word Aegyptos. But the Greeks and the other Indo-Europeans got that word from the African name of the capital that today is called Memphis, but they called it Hiku-Ptah. Hiku-Ptah is the hill that rose up out of the waters to establish the theocratic capital of Kemet. Ptah means hill. And in order to create Memphis, what the African engineers did is that they rediverted the Hapi River. They put an elbow in it and they dumped up land, you know, to create a land base. So they used the imagery of that dumping up of land, moving the waters as a hill that came up out of the waters of Hapi, or the Nile River. So they called it Hika, which means the spirit of the hill that rose up out of the waters. So Hika-Ptah was the word that the Indo-Europeans came upon, where they then called it Aegyptos. Further people coming in took Aegyptos and made it E-G-Y-P-T. But originally it was H-I-K-A-P-T-A-H.
Right.
So when you use the word Egypt, you're still using an African word. It's like when black folks speak Ebonics. Right. We're speaking English, but we're speaking a different flavor of it through our cultural understanding.
Deep. That's deep. That's deep.
Family, this is us. One of the greatest stories ever told has yet to be told. We are the greatest story that has ever and will ever be told.
Definitely.
And we have that epigenetic tag in us. And that's what I'm trying to tap into our people. We all, deep inside of us, have that spirit of the pyramid builders. Just like we have the plantation dwellers and those that grew up on a project. We also have the DNA of those who will inherit the promised land. And it goes into one of the questions that I think that you're interested in, and that is exactly how we're going to do this. Because, you know, the other thing, family, is that children always said to me, well, Brother Booker T, that was my name before I corrected it. Like, why do I need to know this? Why is this culture important? You know, who cares what people did before me?
Right. That's usually one of the questions I get too. Like, when we discuss African history, it's always, why is it so important? Why is Black history or African history so important? You know, and that's the same question people always ask.
Yeah. Well, you see, the other piece to this is social studies is the area that I focused in. And in social studies, there are basically 5 subject areas. There was a time in my career that I was a director of social studies for my district, 35 schools. There were 27 elementary and 8 middle schools. And it was my responsibility to develop a pacing calendar of what should be taught to children from pre-K through 8th grade, special education, and also, general education, and what I call other gifted education. Because I don't believe in special ed. Right. Because we all need special ed. Mm-hmm. And I know some teachers need special ed.
Right.
You know, special ed is just that. It is a special education.
Right.
You know, and the only difference between general education and special education, as they call it, is time. Mm-hmm. And that's the only requirement that I ever put on teachers. You're going to teach these children the same thing. You're just going to afford them more time to be able to grasp according to their learning style as to how they will do that. But social studies covers 5 basic areas: geography, history, politics, economics, and social. Those 5 areas answer very important questions about life. And if you can answer these 5 questions, then you can pretty much grasp an analysis. Geography answers the question where. Mm-hmm. History answers the question when. Politics answers the question how. Economics answers the question what. And social answers the question who. Who, what, where, when, how. And once you answer those questions, then much of it just takes a critical analysis to come to a conclusion. But you got to know where something is, when something is, how something is, what something is, and who something is. And once you answer those questions, then you move into other areas and you're able to accomplish certain goals that you set out for yourself. And so that becomes
powerful, brother. Powerful. Shay?
So I know that you are moving forward from Hidden Colors, right? You've already discussed this. We know the topics. We know the truth, right? We know the facts. But a lot of our viewers have not been able or have never heard of Hidden Colors. Can you just give them an overview of how this applies and why it's so important and a part of learning about the past?
Dr. Wade Noble's brilliant scholar, Sister Shay, says that culture is to a human as water is to a fish. Mm. You breathe in it, you live in it, you eat in it. Everything you do in your life, you do in it and through it. And when you think about being able to answer those 5 questions, you in the water doing all this, but you have no idea the importance of water in your life as a fish.
Right.
Imagine that. You are existing in an existence, but do not know that that existence is what makes you exist.
Right.
Black folk walking the earth, deeply steeped in African culture, swearing they can't stand Africa. That's ridiculous.
And you know, we got a lot of brothers. I spoke to Dr. Rashidi about this before he passed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And he was quite irritated with this new rhetoric of we're not Africans, we're something else. Yes. And it's continued to cause this diaspora divide that myself and Shay have spoken on right here on this show several times. What is your standpoint on Africans claiming to be something other than Africans for whatever one reason or another?
It's like a fish saying, I live, but I'm not in water. Mm-hmm. And they're telling you that in water. So if you can imagine, because I like to do metaphors, because our people speak in metaphors. Rap music is based in metaphor.
Right.
Our music is based. Our lives are based. You know, yo, that's bad. Okay, that's a metaphor. Something so good it became bad. There was no way we could express how good it was, so we had to do the opposite and say, yo, that's dope. Okay. When I was growing up, dope was dope. Well, I found out about dopamine and melanin, that kind of took it off.
Right.
But the idea is that, like I say to my brothers and sisters that come to me with that concept, the same way they come to me and they tell me that there was a parallel culture growing in America at the same time life was coming from Africa. Okay. No. And like I told you earlier, that there are some times that I just don't discuss anything anymore. It comes a point to my brothers and sisters that I say, look, I love you unconditionally. And I hear what you're saying. But ain't no way you and I will ever be in accord with what you're saying. So let me not waste your time and don't waste mine by even trying to talk to each other right now about that. Right. So tell me, how you like the weather? No, because I don't have time.
Right.
Family, we don't have time now. Our children need this, whatever it is that we are to do, just like our ancestors on the plantation or those who were colonized on the continent. There were groups of Africans that came to realize we don't have time anymore for nonsense.
That's what I saw a quote the other day, and Kobe Bryant, he said that. He said that the biggest mistake that human beings make is thinking that we have time. Found that to be real deep.
You know, and to take that to where I see it, I tell people the most precious thing you have is time. It is the most precious thing you have. You can lose all your money and you can make more. You can lose your house, can burn down, you can build another. But there'll never be another March 18th, 2023.
Right.
And how you spent that time, you can't get back. Time is the most precious thing that we have. In fact, it's the only thing that humans work on in order to become conscious. Time. And that becomes very important to understand. Some people don't realize the value of time, so they'll stand there and argue with you. I don't have a millisecond to argue with you. I just don't have time. I have to move on. Okay, I recognize you. I love you unconditionally. You're my brother, you're my sister, much regard. I don't have time for you right now. Because there are other folk out here that are ready to receive this information. I'm looking for them. Because if I have to convince you of how great you are, there's nothing I can say that will convince you. If I don't have to convince you, then let's just roll back our sleeves and get it on. Let's not waste time. And so I'm in full accord with that concept of time. And when we look at that quote, and we look at our brother Kobe, you can see how dramatically important that concept is.
Absolutely.
Not just for him, but for his daughter. And for his family that will spend time without them. Okay, we ain't got time right now. So you want to go with these QAnon or these conspiracies or whatever? We have to build dynasties. And we have to bequeath to our children a legacy. And when they ask me, the children ask me, well, you know, what's the first step? Because some of them, you know, I convinced them. Because they've been given so much negativity. Even when I'm watching TV now, I see them with young African children who are crying, flies all over their face, you know, sick, you know, constantly. So when children see that, think psychologically, because we get upset with them. And I never did. Because I had children say, I'm ashamed to be African. Look at them on TV. And then people would get upset with them. I never got upset with them. What do you expect from them when we don't talk to them about what they're looking at? Whenever my children were with me, my biological children, even children in school, we would talk about that. I would tell them about a brother I know in Ghana that told a friend of mine that visited his farm. He said, I want you to look out onto the horizon. And he showed him where the east was. And he looked out. He said, now I want you to go south. Look out. Now go west. Look out. Now go north. Look out. And the brother said, okay, I've looked out on the horizon. The brother said, I own all that land. He had farm, he had food, he had produce, he had trees. Africa is not only that, but the enslavement of African people, if you want to look at 1492 on, did not destroy the African culture and civilization. There were many great cultures that existed while the enslavement trade was going on.
Exactly.
We get the impression that Europeans came in and just destroyed everything.
Up until 1905, if I'm not mistaken.
It goes beyond that. Even to this day, brother, there's Africans doing great things in Africa. Now, we are plagued with a lot of problems. I'm not negating that. We have problems here in America, but there's a lot of wonderful things happening in America. Wonderful things happening in the Caribbean, Central and South America. The European didn't have the power to destroy everything. We give them too much power. And the greatest power that they have, people of European descent, the greatest power that they have is the power over our minds.
Psychological.
That's it. The power that they have is the power that we give them. Because when you look at them for who they are, they ain't got no power. And I also tell people, don't be talking about you going to take power back from them, because they don't have the power you want. Only you have the power that you want. So if you spend your time looking at them, trying to take something from them, you're not taking the best that you have within you. And this is what we have to be talking to our children about. They're not all that powerful. And they definitely not all that smart. And I'll tell you that because I've experienced. Because there's a major difference in education. There's a major difference between academic intelligence and emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
I have known academics that were absolutely brilliant. But when it came to emotion, they was cuckoo for Cocoa Pops. And I'm talking about people that went on to go to Harvard, Yale. Some of the craziest people I've ever met in my life have double degrees from Harvard and Columbia. And we have this image of education that makes you who you are. Dr. Clarke didn't get out the 7th grade, brother. All of his awards that he got, he was what's called an autodidact. He taught himself that. He wrote so profusely, his writings went up. That's how he was able to advance to retire at the chairperson emeritus of Hunter College's Black and Puerto Rican Studies Department. The brother didn't get out the 7th grade.
Wow.
He is the one that I give all credit for all my intellectual inquisitiveness about Africa, historically.
I hope everybody listening get your pen, because Dr. Clarke, who really was a pioneer in Pan-Africanism, really, it's amazing to know he didn't even get out of the 7th grade. Self-taught.
That's it.
Tapped into his inner being to understand who he was. How important your history is to you, Chey?
So, one thing I gotta say, right? I am absolutely loving the hoodie.
All right.
Can we say it a little bit more?
You know, I would have worn my beanie because I got a beanie that matched. This comes from 3150. The first dynasty, the year of the first dynasty.
See, I like that hoodie, right? Because in the presentation that we just had in Buffalo, I literally broke down the sciences of circumnavigation, right? And combining what we know or what is being called as, the Native Americans here, right? And their coalition with the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, using the building of the pyramids up and down North and South America. So I absolutely love your hoodie right now. But when it comes down
stand
to
up a little bit straighter and pull it down a little bit more.
Yep, that's beautiful.
I need one now.
Yes,
I'm definitely gonna get one. When it comes down to circumnavigation, right? We always.
Oh, and by the way, my sister, if I can interrupt you just one moment to let you know, they also have one with sister.
Oh, they do?
Indigenous and a sister Kemet. So just to let you know, not just the brother, too. They also have sisters.
Oh, I'm getting both.
Okay.
So when you think about circumnavigation, right, we are taught in the school system about Christopher Columbus. I personally am always getting in trouble with my daughter's teachers about Christopher Columbus every year, right? Because I don't teach my daughter that this is a person that we should be honoring.
Yes.
You know, and I teach her that to honor him and to give him, you know, all this praise for discovering America, which you didn't, is dishonoring your ancestors.
Yeah.
So when you think about circumnavigation and Christopher Columbus and the impact that it's had on our kids, right? Because that's our focus, to enlighten them and to wake them up. What do you think we can do better to make this process easier for all children?
Okay. Sister Shay, let me step back for a minute and tell you that you never get in trouble with your daughter's school because you teach the truth. The honest truth is, the truth, when it's told, causes them trouble.
Right.
They the one in trouble. And that's the way all information is. If we're dropping information, people say, I'm a troublemaker. No, I'm not a troublemaker. I'm a truth teller.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happens that the truth causes you trouble.
Right.
But I'm not a troublemaker. You made your own truth by believing a lie. And when someone tells a perfect lie, the truth is unbelievable. And in terms of navigating the world, there were Africans here that did not come via the Bering Strait. The first Africans that came to this continent came via Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a very good chance that they probably came into South America, because there's a current, a Benguela current, that leaves the western coast of Southern Africa. It's called the Benguela. There are 3 currents that leave off the coast of Africa throughout the entire breadth of the African continent. The southernmost one is called the Benguela current. And the Benguela current will take a ship and bring it right into the Amazon River.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then the wind systems that will go with it. And chances are the first peoples that came to this part of the world were in South America and then traveled. And then you had the second migration known as the Clovis Folsom. And they would come at a later date, but they were the taller stature Africans. The first Africans came here were the Twa people, the very short statured people, derogatorily called pygmies.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the third was the Algonquins, still an African people, but they would be settling in southern Canada, northern United States, up there in all those states on that boundary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, coming from New York, going straight across. Africans learned how to get on the waters. They learned how to build a boat. The first Vikings were black. There are carvings of them. The book, The First Americans Were Africans by Dr. David Imhotep, shows you the carvings of short-statured black people.
Yes.
Their black people look like Kevin Hart. I mean, I don't mean to yell out my brother Kevin, but I'm just saying that his height,
Right.
he would be considered a giant.
So when you say that, Kaba, you know, a lot of the rhetoric goes back to Ivan Van Sertima and his thoughts of Abu Bakr of Mali. And was this the later after?
Yes.
Far after. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, I went to Mexico and studied with Dr. Van Sertima in the summer of 1984. Mm-hmm. A year after I had gone to Egypt for the first time in 83 with Dr. Ben. I saw what he was talking about. They came before Columbus. I saw where he got this from. And there are waves of Africans coming here. See, this is where a lot of the misunderstandings come from. Because I hear brothers and sisters talk about Africans being here in America originally. And they're correct. But they came from Africa.
Exactly.
But African people were the first people in America. And I have studied scholars that have dated bones in San Diego, California, of a black woman, and the bones are dated 90,000 years ago.
Talk about it.
Khalifa was
That's where California comes from.
That's where the word California comes from. And the Khalifa people. In Hawaii, all black people. King Kamehameha was the last king. This brother got a short afro. His sister, I got an aunt named Mabel, look like her. And so, this discussion that we're having has to be opened up. And I think because of my interest in astronomy, I think in terms of billions of years. I think of times when the Earth didn't exist. I think of times when our solar system didn't exist. So that when you have a breadth of view of something, a lot of other things come into existence. So I could see how the first humans in America were Africans. But they date back so far, people that don't do the proper research might think that they originated there. When you don't see the capacity of black people going on the waters, when everything you see is they're asking other people for money. They got this now thing on where there's a ship that travels on the water doing operations for black people, in Africa that are deformed or distorted. Their bodies are troubled. And so we're watching them denigrate Africa, but ain't nothing more denigrated than what's happening in Ukraine today.
Exactly.
Because what I tell people all the time is, you talk about empathy, ain't nobody in the world more empathetic to Ukrainians than black folk.
Exactly.
We know what it's like for an alien people to come and bomb your house and bomb your children and bomb your hospitals and make you leave your land. Nobody understands it better than black people.
And then we happen to be take the brunt of the assault in the end.
Exactly.
As we see what's happening with a lot of our brothers and sisters in the Ukraine right now. Unable to flee.
Absolutely. By the same people that everybody's honoring. And again, I don't speak in absolutes. I know there's good and bad in all people. Okay, so I'm not going to blanketly say anything about anybody that everybody's like that. But I remember the story that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad used to tell, where he said that there are 1,000 wolves outside your door, and there's 900 of them going to tear you apart, eat you up the moment you step outside. And there is 100 that would put their life on the line to protect you. This is when we start talking about good white people. Okay? 100 of them would put their life on the line, and they would, and you know that they would. But here's the problem. You don't know where they are in that 1,000. Are you ready to go outside?
Nope.
I ain't. So the point that I'm making is I ain't got time to look for good white people. Besides, if you did your job right, those 100 would do battle with the 900 to make it safe for me to come outside. See, this thing that's going on here in America with the Republicans and the Democrats and, with the Hatfields and the McCoys and all the rest of this stuff, okay? They've been at war with each other from the very beginning. The idea of democracy, demokratia, comes from the word people power. Demokratia. Republican comes from the concept of for the people, republica. Neither of them are for the people or give the people power. Yet they claim to do all this. And so here we are, we're watching all this going on. And we're all being tripped up because we are not properly based. So when children say to me, why do you need to know this? Is because outside of every temple in Kemet, there was a sign that said, know thyself. And it is only in knowing yourself that leads to the second step, which is to manage yourself, or what we call self-discipline. And when you can know yourself and have self-discipline, then you can know other people, which is social knowledge. And then when you know other people, then you can manage other people, and that's called leadership. But the first step in this odyssey is to know yourself. And they say, well, why do you got to go back so far? Well, then, okay, I do this recently. I didn't have it back then, but I have a Nerf slingshot. I picked it up when I was hanging out with my grandson one day. And I said, wow, I can tell that story now. And a slingshot, you know, you put a projectile in the sling and you pull it back. And the further you pull it back, the further in front you're going to project it.
Yep.
The further back I ain't pulling this back just to stay back here. I'm pulling it back specifically to project it in front of me.
That's deep.
With knowledge of self, I always say, allow me to put your mind in this sling and pull it back. And pull it back as far as I can take it. In fact, I can take your mind to a time before the beginning began, before existence existed. And if I can take you back this far, I can project you into the future. So everything that I do is not to take you back there. I'm only taking you back there in order to project you forward.
I love that. I love that.
A prophet is not a psychic. A prophet is a good historian. Because when you know what happened in the past, you can interpret what's happening in the present, and you can predict what's going to happen in the future.
True.
And when it happened, everybody looking at you say, well, how did you know that? You know, you must be palm reading or something. It had nothing to do with that. I knew what happened in the past. Just like I know what's going to happen now. Because I know what happened in the past.
And that brings me to Chey, what you opened up with. The quote from Marcus Garvey that you opened up with. You want to tell them, everybody?
Now go ahead. I like it.
It's a person without his culture or history is like a tree with no roots. You know, Marcus Garvey told us that. You know, that's very same thing, that the importance of knowing your history, of going back, like that slingshot that Brother Kaba just mentioned here. Also, I want to talk about the African influence on you. A lot of times we hear about the Moors. Talk to us about how the African came into Europe. What was the purpose and how they helped influence and civilize what Europe became?
I would have to take you back before the Moors. There's evidence of Africans in Spain, 1100 BC. There's evidence of them in 700 BC. There is evidence of Africans impacting the Spanish language. And we really don't understand and know who we are. They have not taught us this information. And so it's very difficult to understand who the Moors were, because I always talk about something called episodic history and holistic history. And episodic history is when you teach in episodes. Like, for instance, if you were to teach about the Moors, 711 to 1492, that's episodic. But how did they get there? And you see, what happens is that the system allows you to put Indo-Europeans there, where you can actually believe that the University of Timbuktu was created by Islam or by Muslims. The reason why those Indo-Europeans went to Timbuktu was because they knew it was a learning center for hundreds of years before that.
Yes.
Episodic history, like Egyptian history. You see, that's why I say you can't understand Kemet if you don't understand Kush, because there is a long-lasting dynastic legacy that would lead Africans from inner Africa straight up into Kemet to create what they created. But when you can cut off the head and you can create an episode, then you can slide Indo-Europeans in like we got now that will claim that they were part of the builders of the pyramids. They didn't even exist when the pyramids went up. They weren't even in that land area. The people that are in Egypt today are like the Europeans in America today. They were not here thousands of years ago. No more than the people who are there now. They came mass into Africa after 600 whatever, when Islam.
Caliphate.
Okay, that's when they traveled. But they were not here before. And the only thing that I ask them all the time is, wow, that's some great building you did. But where is it where you come from? You mean to tell me that you came to Africa, you left your land and came to Africa to build things that you didn't build in your own land?
Exactly.
How did you do that? What was it about Africa that made you do what you did that you didn't do in your own neighborhood? What was? And then why didn't you go back and do it there? After you learned how to do it in Africa, why didn't you go back and do it where you came from?
When we know the answer, Brother Kaba, and that is because the Africans had done this, and African scribes and priests did not give the sacred knowledge away immediately. This is why a lot of the temples were destroyed, and this is why a lot of the ancient science has been lost because of, the destruction of, the different temples and the murdering of priests and overthrowing the government of ancient Kemet.
Yeah. And that's why I wrote the 3 books that I wrote. And I wrote them in Trinity form because they're all related to each other. The first book is on William Leo Hansberry, who was the architect for America's African Studies program. He was the first to ever develop any course on Africa taught in an accredited college. My second book was Spirituality Before Religions, because I had to take our people back before their religions were formed. Because we're fighting too much amongst our religions. Okay, be us a Christian or being a Muslim, being Hebrew, being Buddhist, Rosicrucian, whatever. We all arguing about who's right. We all claim to have a same God. But somehow or other, those gods are whispering in our ears to kill each other.
That's why Malcolm X said, he said, when we walk in a room to talk about unity, we got to put our religions in our pockets.
That's it. As we do everything else that we proselytize, be it our social clubs, our religions, our jobs, and we have to focus in on what is good for the African people. We have to become issue oriented and stop getting in each other's business. I belong to a very special club. Got a long name, but I belong to a very special club, and there are people that claim to belong in it, but I don't think that they belong to this club. The club I belong to is titled, I Mind My Own Damn Business. But there's still more to it. It's a long title. I tell you, it's a long title.
Yeah.
But the day I started minding my own damn business was the day I came to realize how much damn business I had to mind.
Right.
Family, I work constantly. I wish there were more hours in the days, more weeks in the year, for me to be able to achieve all that I'd like to. I cannot see where I could find the time to get into other people's business with what I'm trying to do for our people. I just don't see that time. And going back to the value of time, I just don't see that time. And how do we want to spend our time? Jaw-jacking each other? Or just getting very serious about what we have to do together? I have worked with people that can't stand me. And I can't stand them. But that's not the point. The point is the issue for our people. And I've had the great opportunity to work with people that couldn't stand me. And we've worked together to get the job done.
I'd like to moving on people forward.
That's the bottom line. That's all we should be for. I don't care if you're weavable or unbelievable. I don't care what you do as it relates to your own personal habits or anything else like that. When the job has to be done, it has to be done. That can be dealt with at a later date. But right now, we have work to do. And there have been times that we have done what we had to do and been successful. And I'd like to tell you that we became friends. And we didn't. We still couldn't stand each other, but we got the job done. And that's all that mattered. I wasn't expecting to be invited to your house for dinner, and ain't no time I was going to invite you to mine. But that's not what we had to do. We had a job. We had an issue that we had to resolve.
You know, that brings me to another point. You know, as I, continue to teach African history like yourself, we run into individuals that, and as you mentioned, we don't have time for it, but we're running into people who feel that there's a difference between Black history and African history. And some people will say that a group of individuals will say that Black history is from 1444, the enslavement of African people, down to the present, as in African history was something before that. And then we're seeing this big divide there. How is it important for Africans in the diaspora to have that Sankofa mentality, to look back at where they were further back, past transatlantic, the Middle Passage, slavery? How important is it for the diaspora to do that?
That's what I mean by episodic and holistic history. All those things that you just described, those are all episodes. How do they all come together into a picture? We have to look at this holistically. Every one of those episodes is very important. But their only importance is how it relates to the whole picture. It's like a puzzle with different pieces. Every piece is important because it makes up the holistic picture. But if you just hold up one piece of the puzzle, that don't mean anything to anybody. It's when you put it together. What is the relationship between an African American such as myself? My mother is from Boston, my father is from Alabama. What is my relationship with my brothers and sisters in Jamaica and in Puerto Rico and in Ghana and in Africans that live in Suriname in South America or in Holland and they speak Dutch? What's my relationship with my Brazilian brothers and sisters? So once you see all those pieces, then everything comes together to see the whole picture.
Right.
Europeans have divided everything up so that we don't understand the importance of understanding Pan-African, or what from an African perspective is called Nebu Afrika, which is, Nebu means all, and Afrika means the flesh of the light and heat energy of the sun, who is us. So it's not just Black people, it's nature. Nebu Afrika is much larger than just human. The humans are included in it, but the whole picture is how do we relate to everything around us?
Right.
And as an African people going back in time and studying, and Africa is a continent, it's not a country. So it's important that we understand the diversification of Africa and the many different types of mindsets and many different types of people, but the same people. So that when we look at this and we understand that you relate to everything in your life has import, whatever it may be. From the tiniest cockroach to the hugest oak tree. It all has some relationship to us. We cannot harm a dolphin and think that's not going to come back on us.
Right.
And nature takes care. Because nature came through. It was hanging around us for about 2 years so far.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Said, okay,
we know all about it.
Okay. Y'all don't want to get along, right? Y'all can't stand each other. Okay. You all starting trouble. You all starting wars. Okay. Here's what the cosmic Black mother gonna do. I'm coming through and I'm sending you all into your rooms, and don't come out until I tell you. Because you know how Mama used to do it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
She getting ready. Mother Earth is getting ready for her mother to come, the cosmic mother.
Right.
And all the children are acting up. They fighting, kicking each other, throwing things over, spilling stuff. And Mother Nature's telling the children, look, my mother's coming to visit us. If she see you acting like this, I'm in trouble. Mm-hmm. So I got to get you right before she even come in this door. So I'm telling y'all, stop. They keep acting up.
Right.
Mother Nature said, and Sister Shay, I think you might know this. She said, don't make me get up out this chair now.
Shay be saying that to her kids.
Okay, that's the last warning Mama gives before she does what she has to do.
Before she rise up.
One more chance. Don't make me get up out this chair because you know what I'll do. But they keep acting up. And Mother come through and everybody scatters.
Exactly.
And that was this virus that just came through.
Mm-hmm.
Put everybody in their room. Not a shot fired, not a bomb dropped, but everybody went home. Mm-hmm. Even the Atlanta housewives stayed at home.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's something when that goes. Don't play with nature.
Yeah.
Our arms are too short to box with nature.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take it back for a second, because we did touch on Christopher Columbus and we touched on Spain. I like to hit our viewers with like little fun facts, right? So I would like to say for this fun fact that when we're talking about Spain, right, and we're talking about the African people going into Spain and being there since 1100 BC, I think it's important for people to realize that the southern coast of Spain, Gibraltar, is only 14 miles from Africa. That is extremely close. So it doesn't take, everybody thinks that it's such a, seafaring job and it's so hard. 14 miles is nothing. Most people could swim that if, they're aquatically inclined. Mm-hmm. But 14 miles, and then you look at like the Palace of Alhambra, right? Beautiful palace. And the type of architecture and the type of adornments, are rooted in African culture. So I wanted to hit everybody with that little fun fact.
Absolutely.
And I also want to throw one fun fact out there that the Nino and the Penzone brothers were black people.
Say it one time for the people in the back.
The Nino and the Penzone brothers were black people who helped Christopher Columbus to sail those ships to the Americas. Probably were the navigators.
Let me give you another fun fact to attach to what you just said, because it's very interesting. We find there's a book titled The Life of Columbus, written by John Boyd Thatcher. Thatcher, Thatcher, John Boyd Thatcher, come in 3 volumes. He, through records, can locate Cristobal Colon, because that was his name. His name wasn't Christopher Columbus. They can locate Cristobal Colon on the west coast of Africa in 1482, 10 years before. He knew exactly where he was going because he met Africans that had been going to America. Mm-hmm. So that's how he knew exactly where he was going. But remember, Cristobal Colon was married to Portuguese royalty. The only reason why he got involved in Spain was because Portugal lost its power and its finances. When Cristobal Colon went on the first voyage and he came back, he ended up in a place called Paraíso. He ended up in the court of Paraíso, which was in Portugal. And by the time he got to Spain, they were wondering, why did you go to Portugal? Why didn't you come back to us? We're the ones that are bankrolling this. Why did you go? He said, well, he got caught up in a storm. And he ended up there. And the Spanish said, there's no storm. There hasn't been no storm. So that was the first flag that went up on him. By the time his 4th voyage, he set out on his 4th voyage. This is something that they don't tell you. The Spanish crown sent military out to arrest Cristobal Colon, bring him back to Spain, tried him for treason, found guilty, and put in prison for treason. His son Diego Colon, because that's another thing. Why is his son's name Diego Colon and his name is Cristobal Colon? Cristoforo Colombo. Why is his son's name Colon? Well, that's because they changed Cristobal Colon's name to Cristoforo Colombo, but that's a side story. His son came on his behalf and wanted to get him out of prison. And so the Spanish crown said, okay, we'll do that. But here's what you got. Give us everything he has. Everything he stole. All of his life. And you see, there's a reason why he did that. Because he had a very good friend named Alberto Vespucci, who was Portuguese. And remember, the Pope divided the world up. The Treaty of Tordesillas divided the world up between the Portuguese and the Spanish. The Spanish got the west side of the mark, the line of demarcation, and the Portuguese got the east. That's how they were able to get into Africa, Mozambique, Angola, places like that. But the thing is that when they came to South America, they came to realize that South America has a lot of mountains, but the most fruitful part of the land is Brazil. And so what Cristobal Colon did was to give the advice to Alberto and also to the Portuguese royalty that he was married to. And the Pope divided that line twice. He said he made a mistake. And so what he did is he moved the line of demarcation further over to the west so that Portugal could get Brazil. And the Spanish became aware of what Cristobal Colon was doing. He was a double agent. The Spanish were paying him, but he was really working for the Portuguese. Mm-hmm. And so his son negotiated, got him out. And they said, we don't care what you do, but you got to get that traitor out of this country. Now, here's a fun fact, or here's a fun question. Where do you think Cristobal Colon, Christopher Columbus, is buried today? He's buried in the Dominican Republic.
Really?
Yes. See, now Spain trying to get his body back because he's so popular. But he was kicked out of Spain because he was a traitor. There was a time in history where Benedict Arnold and Christopher Columbus were synonymous for traitor.
Yep, that's true. I agree with that.
And the only reason why Christopher Columbus, his name was changed from Cristobal Colon to Cristoforo Colombo, and then it was anglicized in the 20th century to Christopher Columbus. And the first Christopher Columbus Day parade was celebrated in 1946 because America thanked the Italian Americans for their double agent and their support of America against Italy and the fascists under Mussolini. That's why we have this parade today. They took somebody, changed their name, and gave them to another people as a gift. Does that sound?
That's crazy. Wow.
That's a fun fact right there. And please, family, don't believe a word I say.
Look it up.
I just want to make you think. The only thing black folk need to do is think. Yep. When someone tells a perfect lie, the truth is unbelievable. All I want to do, I told you the book that you could go to. The Life of Columbus, John Boyd Thatcher. It's a 3-volume set. It was written in 1905.
Now, does that touch on the theory of Ivan Van Sertima?
Well, there's another book that had impacted Dr. Van Sertima. Dr. Van Sertima quoted, that's how I found out about the book by John Boyd Thatcher. Wiener, Dr. Wiener.
Leo Wiener.
Leo Wiener wrote a book.
African Discovery in America.
Exactly. And Dr. Van Sertima told me that he purposefully didn't believe it. And he wanted to prove Leo Wiener wrong. And he said, look what came out of me trying to prove him wrong was they came before Columbus. He brought more evidence that Leo Wiener was correct.
Right. Yeah, the African plants, the African plants, the bottle gourd, the squash, the sweet potato, the yam, the plantain. These were African plants that were in the Americas from this, the study of this botanist, Leo Wiener, who was able to prove this in the early 1900s. But, because he was kind of, a minority at that time, so to speak. He was kind of like overlooked. But it's good that Ivan Van Sertima was able to pull that information back up and go further and take it into the Olmec heads. Mm-hmm. I do want to let everyone know, who believe that Van Sertima's idea was that the Olmec people were African, but it wasn't. His idea was that there was a group of Africans who came into Mexico at the time and kind of turned it out, and were basically ruling over these native people at that time. Am I correct on that, or?
Yes, and the concept that I always approach that with is how wonderful that concept is to understand. Because by numbers, give or take, we're looking at 13% of the population were African, of the indigenous. Now remember, these indigenous people are already Black from the past. The Paleo-Americans and the Clovis Folsom, they're already Black. These are a brown people already, but they are known as indigenous because they're here in the American hemisphere.
Right.
But what this shines a light on is the fact that Africans didn't come to conquer. Mm-hmm. They came to share and return. Mm-hmm. And so their concept of ruling wasn't as much like ruling as much as it was if somebody came into our neighborhood and brought in advanced technology and they were willing to teach us that and respect us and take us through a process and raise our civilization up. You could say they were ruling us because they'd be telling us what to do. But on another level, they're not really ruling us. They're bringing a civilization in that is superimposing its genius on the genius that we already have that allows us to do better for our people. And the fact that it's only 13%, this is how they found it in the cemetery. They found 13% of the people buried were African. And the fact is, Africans didn't come to stay. They came to share and go back to Africa. Some stayed, some intermarried, created civilizations and family, but they blended into the community and they did not abuse the people. It's a different way of looking at the world. And I think the fact that I'm not saying, I'm very clear on this because I know a lot of Native Americans. In fact, I did a 4-part series on the indigenous American. It's in my webinar. If you go to my website, kabakamene.com, you can download my webinars on ancient America. And what we have to know and see is that the world was populated in waves. Africans came here in waves, not just one time, not just the Olmec. They were here with the Paleo-American. They were here with the Clovis Folsom. They came 5 times in the ancient world, but they kept coming here. And indigenous people went to Africa.
Yeah, because we know that I believe it was Ramses II or Ramses III who had cocaine in his stomach and his hair follicles as well.
Exactly. And we find him on the Mississippi River. And the Mississippi River was to American culture what the Nile or the Hapi was to African culture. It was a throughway. It was a transportation system. The Mississippi River, when you're on the Mississippi River, you can, through tributaries and streams and other areas, you can get from the northernmost part of Alaska to the southernmost area of South America called Tierra del Fuego. That's how important the Mississippi River was to the indigenous people. And in the Y of the Mississippi, which is today called Collinsville, Illinois, it was called Cahokia in the ancient world. In that Y, they built the capital called Cahokia, and they have a pyramid called Monk's Mound. And at Monk's Mound and in the surrounding area, because I've done presentations on top of Monk's Mound, and I did it during one of the autumnal equinoxes, where I did a class. It's located right outside St. Louis, where Illinois goes right into St. Louis. It's right in that general area. In fact, the hotel where I stayed was in St. Louis, and the classes I did was in Illinois. And so you see evidence of the Muskegon, the Siouan, the Haudenosaunee, which is misnomered the Iroquois. You can see evidence of indigenous people from Canada to South America. You can see evidences of original languages spoken at Cahokia. You can see tools. You can see trading things where they came from California. They came from parts of Saskatchewan in Canada, Montreal, from northern New York, the Lenape. You know, you can see evidence of them in Illinois. So it's like, if you want to call it, Cahokia was Indigenous Americans, Washington, D.C.
Wow. Chey, you mentioned in your conference, in your segment of the conference that we did here in Buffalo, you mentioned about the circumnavigation. You also mentioned about the Africans being found in Australia. Do you want to expound a little bit on Khufu and the Africans, the Kemites in Australia as well, which is also part of this circumnavigation conversation?
Yeah, so it was discovered in Gosford, Australia, that Khufu, or in the time of Khufu and Khafre and Djeffrey, that they had came to Australia twice. So, and then what was really fascinating about it was that the language, the hieroglyphs of Khufu's name and Khafre's name was the exact same way as in Egypt in the pyramids of Giza. And in no other place on earth is it the exact same as in those two locations.
When one of the things, like I always say, when someone tells a perfect lie, the truth is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. There will come a time when the ancient world will be shown for exactly who and what they were. What the Indo-European people have done is they have squashed history. And we should not be surprised at Africans being anywhere in the world under any circumstances, particularly during the Old Kingdom, where you speak of Khufu, the fourth kingdom. We should not be surprised. But because Africans have been so denigrated, and that because the concept of them being able to rule or be in the world at any point in time, we find it almost fantabulous that could be even thought of. But the reality of it is that when true history is shown, my sister Chey, we're going to find out there is so much more to what has happened in the ancient world, the trade. We are going to find that there are civilizations built under the civilizations that we today think are ancient. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're going to push the human family's existence back millions of years. It ain't going to be no 4 million years ago. It's going to go back way far. But that's our job, to encourage and inspire our children to do this research. It's our job. It's not their job. And I don't blame them. They who would wish to oppress us are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. So therefore, I have no surprise, no expectations, no letdown. What I am saying to us is, I have a challenge of what we're doing. They're doing what they're supposed to do. We're not doing what we're supposed to do. Every group in New York City, so to speak, when they became large in number, one of the first things they did was take over the educational system, be it the Irish, the Italian, or Europeans who practiced the Jewish faith. They all became the teachers of the system in order to teach their children their history. We are the only ones that have allowed foreign people to educate our children, and we have not taken over the system. That's why I went in. And not only did I go in, but I moved from Manhattan to the Bronx back in the 70s so that I could be in my community, so that the children that I taught could see me in the supermarket or into the movies or in a restaurant, or just walking in the street. They see me walking with my wife and children. We have got to teach our truth. It's not their job. And not only that, fam, even if they did, they do such a bad job, you wish they didn't do it at all.
Exactly.
Because there's only one thing worse than a lie. And that's a truth told the wrong way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. This has been a real treat, Dr. Kamene, you know, just to have you here and to be enlightened, have our listeners listen to your masterful teaching, how you learned under Dr. Ben, the ancient culture, and how to reach our higher self. Why don't you, in closing, tell us, what are you doing right now to benefit pushing our people forward?
I'm also a student. Our brother's still with us, Dr. Wade Nobles. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Wade Nobles always told us that you have to understand the difference between content and intent when you're teaching. Content is what you teach. Intent is how you teach it, methodology. And so what I've developed is a quick webinar, about a half hour, that I do every Tuesday, that exposes the community to my staff development, professional development, as to how to teach. I'm just going to complete a 4-part series on Malcolm X and Paul Robeson, and that they were bringing the United States before the United Nations on charges of genocide. I also did one on the importance of understanding what artificial intelligence is, about multiple intelligences and Bloom's taxonomy. These are all terms in education that assist us in knowing how to teach. You know, there's a proverb that came out of the Moors of North Africa. It said, after you have learned what you set out to learn, what you learned you can put to the side, because it was the process of you learning it that was the truest education. Mm-hmm. When you're teaching, even with what we're doing right now, when I'm speaking to you, neurons are being connected constantly. And with information like fun facts and things that the audience may never have known before, we are connecting neurons that have never been connected before. Right. That's why it's new to them. And it's new to me. When I learn something new, it's something that I did not necessarily know before because my neurons were not connected. Neurons are nerve cells in the brain. And so I'm going to start a series on the brain to teach. You know, as a teacher, you need to know the Broca system and the Wernicke system in the brain. One is where speech comprehension is created, where speech is created, and the other is where it's comprehended. One is in the frontal lobe, the other is in the temporal lobe. As a teacher, we should know this. This ain't something that we should just all of a sudden find out years later. This should have been in our college classes. And so my webinars are meant to bring this information to the community, because I realized that even the adults weren't taught like this. So it's not just for teachers. Mm-hmm. It's for anybody that would like to know how you should have been taught.
Re-education.
Exactly. And now my webinars, I do one on the first Sunday of the month, which is on my third book, Shabaka Stone, which is a cosmic theory on the origin of the universe. It's our astronomy. And on the third Friday of the month, which I just put up the other day, I started the webinar series on the origin and development of the Caucasoid. Because we're looking now. How did this come to be? Where did they come from? Okay, you know, I hear people say that they're mutations of Africans, but how did that happen? And so I've got a 4-part series on that. And not only that, but you get a PDF on all of my webinars and webinars. You get a PDF copy of my PowerPoint, because I've got a book list that if you want to understand who you're dealing with, I got the books for you. Like I say, family, don't believe me. I'm not interested in you believing me. People say, I don't believe that. I don't care. I'm not telling you this for you to believe me. I just want to make you think. Because somebody has pulled a perfect lie. And that makes the truth unbelievable. For me to tell black folk, when black folk have gotten up and moved into another scene, when I tell them that a black woman was found in San Diego, California, 90,000 years old. They don't believe me. They can't believe me. Because they have been so programmed to be inferior. They taught you that everything good that came into your life was the day I came and robbed you from your country.
Exactly. And that's what we want to wake up every one of our listeners to on the Culture Show. Right here, we have Dr. Kamene in the building with us. It's been, like I said, it's been a real pleasure. Shay, do you have anything that you want to throw out there to Brother Kamene before we close?
I mean, once again, like, there's so much we don't have time. I'm sorry.
Well, it gives us a reason to do this again.
Yes, it will.
Definitely.
Yes, it
No
will.
doubt. And
Kamene,
before
we let you go, we need to have you give your social medias, your website, everything out there for people to contact you about your webinar. Throw that information out there.
Thank you for the opportunity, brother. I've written 3 books. They're all on Amazon. It was the quickest and the best way for me to publish books with what I have. I have 3 books there. You can go to Amazon. You can go to KabaKamene.com. KabaKamene.com. That's my website. From my website, you can then go into my bio and my link, and you can download the materials that I have up there. My Instagram page, I should have said it this way. Instagram page is at Kaba Kamene, KabaKamene. The books that I wrote, I don't write because I'm a writer. I wrote because I felt I had something to say. And a lot of the opportunities that you are giving me this evening to speak to the community is why I wrote those books. Because we have got to look at ourselves a different way. The Creator doesn't make mistakes. And so it's important that we understand this. So my website, KabaKamene.com, you put your email in and you'll receive my free e-course and my free study guide. 44 pages. Got all the books listed, all the themes: origin of life in Africa, Africans in America, Africans in Asia, the Moors, all of it broken down so that you can understand how to approach the study of how life came into existence.
Beautiful.
And so from my Instagram, my community bulletin board, I call it the meeting at the African Square. And then you have my website where you can download my materials. I have many things up there that have no price. It's zero. Because I realize what we're going through as a people. But I also realize that we need to have this information. And if you want this information, I want to make it possible for you to be able to get it. There are other things that there is a price on. And then there are things that have a price plus, which means that if that's what you got, that's cool. But if you feel you want to give a little something extra, you can do that too. Because the more you support the scholars, and not just me, family, for all the other folk that you've had on your programs, for all the other people you spoke about, Brother Runoko Rashidi, Anthony Browder, Wade Nobles, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, James Smalls. I could go through the list. Shahrazad Ali. All of them need support. And the more you support these scholars, the more they can support you.
Exactly. Shout out to Dr. Anthony Browder too, by the way. He's doing some. He's one of the first Africans to be a part of an Egyptian excavation that's coming soon. So look out for that as well. Shout out to Dr. Browder.
And his daughter Atlantis. It's a wonderful family.
Oh yeah.
It's a wonderful group of people. These are great people, family. And I thank you for exposing us to the community and the community to us. Because without you, like with all the work that I do, if I didn't have someone like you and Sister Chey, I would just be a voice talking in the wind. You act as my microphone.
Mm-hmm.
And you allow me to speak to thousands and possible millions of people by your platform and what you do. So congratulations to you, my brother.
Thank you, man. We're and as we always say, you mentioned the Orishas earlier, the Yoruba people, as the great saying of "so be it, Ashe." We say it to you, and we say it to all our listeners. Hotep to all the family out there, to know thyself. A person without his culture, history, is like a tree with no root. We do not want to be that tree that's easy to remove by not having our roots deep into the soil. Thank you, Dr. Kamene, for being with us here today.
All power to the people, family.